How's it going, everybody? I'm a little late. Next episode, very important. A lot of information. It's taken me a second to put it together, but it's probably the most important episode thus far. In this episode, we're going to be sharing plans with you about the water, answering a lot of questions that we've gotten about how we're going to get our water, how we're going to filter our water, where the water is going to come from, pretty much all of our sources. And then water actually will help to answer one of the main questions that we always get. That is, what are you going to do in the event that it's cloudy outside and you can't generate a lot of power with your solar panels? And so a lot of interesting information in this next video. I think you guys, if you really truly are interested in this type of information and just seeing how things are going to be engineered for us in our situation, maybe it'll help you, maybe it won't, but I suggest you stick around. It's going to be awesome. Happy Saturday, folks. Let's get it cracking. Okay, so let's get it cracking here. What you're looking at right now is the overall dimensions of our lot and a rough estimate of where things are going to be placed. If you look at the front left, you'll see that small little box there. That small little box is the highest part of our property. It's the highest point, I should say, of our property. Everything runs downhill from that spot. That is going to be where our rain catch and filter house will be located. So, with that being said, we might as well start there, yeah? All right, so here's what that is going to look like. It's going to be a hip roof with a 3,000 gallon tank that's suitable for holding potable water. It'll be a hip roof with 4 sides being equipped with gutters. The gutters will be like the Rain-X style gutter, not Rain-X, but the gutter guard style of gutter, where debris and stuff won't get in, but water will. And that water will flow from those gutters into that 3,000 gallon tank. Now the plan is to have 2 3,000 gallon tanks when it's all said and done, but we can get our situation started with 1. So I'm just going to focus on that, but you can see, if you look at the tank represented in this graphic on the right side, it says 2 overflow tank. So basically what will happen is this tank will be under the roof and all of the gutter downspouts will run into this tank. Once this tank is almost full, it will dump off into the secondary tank. It's pretty self-explanatory. You got a hip roof, you got 4 gutters on all sides, and all of that water is feeding into the tank. The tank is eventually discharging from the pipe at the bottom into essentially it'll look like an outhouse, but it's going to be where our filtration system is set up and locked up because water is very important, and you want to make sure that people can't get in and try and tamper with your water source. The good thing is that this tank will filter pretty much everything, and all we will be getting is pure water. And that's not just drinking water. We'll be showering with that water. All of our water that gets to our house will be filtered and treated with UV light to kill bacteria and that sort of thing. But don't listen to me. We are very inspired by another YouTube channel called Life Uncontained. And they recently, not recently, but a few months ago, posted a video that pretty much has the exact filtration setup that we're looking to do. And I'm just going to let them explain it a little bit better. And we'll put a link to their channel in the description for this video. And I advise you guys to go and check those guys out. We've never met them. We don't have any association personally with them, but their channel definitely inspires us, and we subscribe and keep up with what they've got going on. And they pretty much sum it up really, really well as far as what this filtration cabinet will look like and that sort of thing. So check them out.
In the mail, but we're going to go ahead and show you how we have our whole pump system set up and how we will be filtering our rainwater.
Alright, just to give you guys a quick rundown of what's going on inside of our pump house, how we're filtering water and how it's getting back to the main house. First, starting out, our rainwater collection tanks. We have 3 tanks at 2,500 gallons a piece. Each tank is 2,500 gallons. So we have 7,500 gallons in total capacity. That feeds underground to right here. So it comes up through the ground, up to this first filter right here. This is just a reusable sediment filter. That's just solely to filter out any of the larger debris before it makes it to the pump. Comes up over into the pump. If you're wondering what this little shut-off valve right here is for, it's solely for just priming the pump just in case like our water level in the tanks aren't high enough, which currently they're not. If, say in the future, I ever have to do a repair and the water level's a little low, I can always still prime the system. Goes into the pump, pumps out. First stop is our gallon counter, just to see how much water we're using, just to get a rough idea. So it goes down, comes up into the pressure tank. The pressure tank is a 32 gallon pressure tank. And from the pressure tank, it comes up into our first water filter. This water filter is a 5 micron filter. So that means it can filter sediment down to 20 times smaller than the size of a human hair. So from that sediment filter moves into our activated carbon filter. The carbon filter is solely for not only does it improve the taste of water, but it also filters like organic compounds, synthetic compounds, anything, stuff like that. So this just takes out the rest of that stuff, anything that makes it past the carbon filter, or no, the sediment filter, excuse me. And from the carbon filter, the water will flow up into our UV light. Now the UV light's purpose is to, there's no sediment now or any large material inside the water, so it's just pure water. And the only thing that potentially could make it past all of the filters is bacteria. So in order to also filter bacteria out of our water, which there shouldn't really be any, but just in case, we have a UV light. The UV light will kill all bacteria, viruses, anything, microorganisms essentially.
So there you go. Check out their channel, man. Click the link. They're really cool. They're basically on the same wavelength that we are, which is basically quit your jobs, find a way to live where you don't need that much money, and enjoy the rest of your life. Actually live your life. It's pretty awesome. And that's what we're trying to do here too. Shouts to them for getting it done. Their container home's pretty friggin' awesome. Like I said, click the link. Anyway, so right now what you're looking at is a graphic of our property with just the underground spring represented, and you'll see why this is very important in just a second. So we have, if you saw the video where we gave you a quick little tour of our property, you would see that we have some underground springs that show their face at the lowest parts of our property in about 3 or 4 different places, 3 major places, and that's what's represented here on this graphic. The reason why that's important is because we have underground water that surfaces in these 3 areas, and the reason why it's 3 separate areas is because of the grade of the property. In that creek bed where the underground spring is showing its face, it kind of levels out and then it pitches down, then it levels out again, and that's just from ground, rainwater and stuff like that pushing the surface dirt and creating sediment, and then the sediment deposits where it's going to deposit, and it creates undulations in the property that prevents you from being able to have a stream, like a steady stream of water. And if the bottom of the creek bed was all planed out and dredged out and then lined with some type of liner, you would have a pretty good flowing stream of water regularly that would be passing through. So this brings us to our next graphic. If you look at this graphic, and yes, I did draw all of these little doodads here. You can see the spring surface location, spring surface location, spring surface location, and you can see what I was talking about how the ground kind of steps and flattens and steps and flattens, and that's kind of slowing down the water as it makes it to the surface. Kind of stops it from being able to flow like a creek would. Okay, so that's where it says current grade. Now the planned spring well, pretty self-explanatory. What we're going to do is we're going to grade out and flatten so that we combine all 3 surface locations of the underground spring. We're going to retain that with a retaining wall, fill that area with gravel, and then inside that gravel we will have a perforated pipe that will expose itself on the outside of the retaining wall, and then on top of that gravel we will put landscape fabric. The groundwater follows the path of least resistance, obviously, so it seeps its way through the gravel, which will take a lot of the sediment and the dirt out of it. It passes through the holes in the perforation of the pipe, and the pipe will have a slight downhill slope that will then have the water exit into a lined holding pond. But within that pipe, we will have an exit pipe that will run water down a steeper grade to what is called a ram pump. A ram pump is a pump that uses hydromechanics to pump water. So the way the ram pump works, pumping mechanically, no electricity needed. Now, you couldn't like hook up a fire hose to it or anything, but I've seen small ram pumps be able to pump about a gallon a minute, gallon every 2 minutes. And considering the fact that it pumps 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without power, that would lead you to believe that if you're getting a gallon a minute, that means you're getting 60 gallons per hour times 24 hours times 365 days. When you put it into that context, and considering it doesn't take any electricity, the ram pump is a no-brainer. Ram pumps use the idea behind back pressure. Basically, the water comes in the supply side, and you can see where there's water that flows out of a chamber with a little door or a valve, which is technically called a check valve. And what happens is that water flows out until the volume of water inside that chamber becomes too great to leave the door open, and it slams the door shut. And at that point, the water only has one place to go, and that is through your exit pipe. So the water basically is trying to go someplace that it cannot go, and literally being pushed. And when it gets pushed, it can only still go in that same direction, which is where you get that little bump in pressure. And so every time that check valve swings shut, the other one opens, the water passes through the supply side or the output side. But because that is also a check valve, the water can't come back in. And so you're constantly just getting an inch up the line, an inch up the line, an inch up the line every time that valve slams shut. And as it goes, it will exit your exit pipe. The example, you can see where the water is going up the tree through that black pipe, and then it's coming out the other side. If you watch the water as it comes out, there's a trickle, but then there's a surge, and every time there's a surge corresponds with the noise of that valve slamming shut. And that's the way ram pumps work. And I've seen ram pumps using 2-inch pipe run a sprinkler head before. If there's any denial or any thought of the pressure not being enough, I included this video. This is a standing ram pump, not an inline, but it's the same principle. And this guy puts these 3 tennis balls inside the upper chamber, and you can see how the pressure in that chamber is so great that it actually crushes the 3 tennis balls. That right there gets transferred to the water push out the exit side, and thus you end up with a high pressure situation. May not be enough like a fire hose or something like that, but it's plenty enough to pump uphill and pump into our holding tanks, in which we are not only going to be reliant on just rain, but we will be able to utilize our spring on a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year basis, pumping water mechanically without the need for electricity. So even if everything goes dark, we will still have real decent water to be able to utilize, and it's all going to be gravity fed. Really the only thing that you would need power in our system for would be the UV light, and you can take pills for that. I think iodine you can take, drop in the water. You could every once in a while you could take a chlorine tab like you would use in your pool and drop 1 chlorine disc in the 3,000 gallons, and it will dilute it so much that the chlorine taste won't be terribly harsh, but at the same time you are putting enough chlorine in the water to kill the micro bacteria that would be in the water that would normally get killed by the UV light. The UV light just allows you to do it without chemicals. So that ram pump and that spring well are 2 especially important items that will be used on our property to make sure that we have an abundance of water on tap and ready to go whenever we need it. So as you can see, that the ram pump is a great option. It's going to keep water flowing into the tanks no matter what. So even if we have a dry spell we'll still have water coming into the tank. This graphic is just going to show you where we're going to be putting everything and kind of the way things are going to be looking. It's really all about all the parts coming together, doing their job. Spring well, providing water to flow easily and smoothly enough down the pipe to the flow well. The spring also feeding the holding pond, as well as the rainwater coming down the dry creek beds that we have, where the water flows downhill from the street and stuff through those dry creek beds, and that all collecting down at the bottom of the hill. And then us being able to get that water back up the hill with no electricity. It's so vital. And these ram pumps, they are not very expensive. They are pretty inexpensive to build. If you have any kind of plumbing or irrigation knowledge, you could build one of these in a second. So yeah, that's our setup for how we're going to get water supplied. So lastly, let's talk about the big question that I get all the time, which is, what are you going to do when it's cloudy and it's raining? How will you be able to generate electricity? Okay, so one thing, generating electricity using our solar is just like 70% of it, maybe even 60% of it. I plan on utilizing all of the options that are out there. Next to our property, there's a gigantic open field, and our property actually borders that big open field. And you can imagine with an open field what the wind, when the wind is really kicking, what that must be like passing through that open field where there's no trees. And so I will be setting up some wind turbine stuff, and we could talk about that when I talk more about our electric and how we're going to generate it. That's a separate video. But I did want to bring up in this video the hydro turbine aspect, because we are talking about water. So on our property, we have all of these tributaries that merge into our dried up creek bed, that I'm sure when it's pouring rain that these things are pretty turbulent. They're moving pretty quick, and you can tell by how much it is eroding those areas. The tributaries, we have several. I think there's 3 or 4 tributaries. In each tributary, if you could imagine, if that water is as turbulent as I think that it is, if we could constrain that water into a direction with a pipe, and then we could put some type of a water-driven turbine, like basically a mini power plant, if you will, then we would be able to generate electricity through those turbines when it's raining. And that's my theory anyway, and the plan that I have for that is right here. So they sell a 12-volt mini turbine that produces 10 watts. How could I harness a good volume of water into a setup small enough that I would be able to manifold a number of those together, then wire them to provide the 24 volts for my system to charge the batteries when we have turbulent waters going down these tributaries? So what I've engineered is basically a retaining wall with some riprap to kind of soften the blow of the water, so the retaining wall isn't taking up all of the water pressure by itself, and then having a large pipe for the majority of the water to be able to pass through but then having two smaller pipes, possibly some 2 or 3 inch pipe that passes through as well, that will also collect a lot of that water that's coming down. And then manifold maybe 6 of those little mini turbines wired for 24 volt in a line on either side, and as water's backing up, it'll also pass through those 2 or 3 inch pipes and should provide a lot of volume. And with 6 or 12 of those things running, if they really are truly producing 10 watts, even if they're producing 8 watts, if you only have 5 of those turbines, if you've got 8 times 5 is 40 watts times 2 setups per dam, and I've got 4 tributaries, it adds up pretty good. You're looking at about 80 watts per tributary times 4 tributaries. You've got 320 watts being brought back to our power cabinet, charging our batteries and allowing us to be able to run our laptops and whatever we might need to run. So using the water to top off our tanks, using the water to top off our batteries, water is the most important thing. And that's why I wanted to spend a lot of time on this video going through some of the setups and the mechanics of what we're planning on doing on our property. Thanks for hanging out, and appreciate you guys tuning in. Subscribe, share, let people know about the channel, and we'll talk to you on number 8. Exciting. Y'all stay safe out there. One love.